Well, good morning, everybody. We just completed making some Florida House history for the first time since 1977, when business was last conducted on these grounds. We returned for the first act of official business since then, and it was a special time. We got to give each member a little lapel pin that was actually made with a portion of copper that was recovered from part of the renovation of the old Capitol, which I think was pretty special, just to remind all of us that we all carry with us the past and have an obligation as a result of that to stand on the shoulders of those who came before us and make sure that our future is just as bright as it is today. And so with that, I'd like to just kick off the purpose of today's press conference, which is to talk about HB1 and HB3. And I will tell you that coming into the legislature, this was not on my radar. I was probably among those that fell in the libertarian camp that said, leave the internet alone, don't regulate it, don't tax it, just let it be free speech. And I'm a deep believer in the importance of free speech. But I don't think this is implicated here. And what we're really talking about is not the rules for adults, which are the rules for adults and they can do whatever they wish to do. But there are many, many things that we all agree that children at a certain age should not do, whether it's smoking cigarettes or alcohol or drugs and so forth, that we don't let them do until they're 18 or in some cases 21. And developmentally, the thought is that at age 16, we need to take a close look at the consequences of social media, as well as the far too easy access for young kids, and I mean like 6-year-olds, to access hardcore pornography. Again, the rules for adults are for adults, but for kids, that's not appropriate, and we need to make sure we do something better than, yes, I'm 18, to make access available to them. And so we're going to look at age verification in both on both counts. And as I commented on before, we know a couple things now, and unfortunately, this is not a one-year experience with social media. It's a generational experiment, and it has been an experiment that has yielded tragic results for our young people. And as I mentioned on opening day, 57% of high school girls over the last year have persistent feelings of loneliness or hopelessness. 41% have had poor mental health in the last 30 days, and 30% of high school girls have contemplated suicide, taking their own lives in the last year. And so you see a very direct correlation, not just in this country, but across the globe and everywhere where social media is available, in a devastating effect on the mental health and well-being of our children. And so it is time, and I think people on both sides of the aisle are realizing we've made a grievous mistake by letting it go on this long. And we've got to address it in a robust way, just as we do many other things that are harmful to children. And so I'm proud to have with me today the sponsors of both HB1, which deals with the social media apps. And the goal there is not the words that are used, because you can use those same words via email or text messaging. The goal is to address a platform that is designed specifically to be addictive to all of us. And that in itself is not helpful for any of us, but for children especially, to keep their eyes on those sites indefinitely for hours and hours a day. And then at the same time, the social media companies know and have known for quite some time the devastating effects on kids' mental health. And notwithstanding that, they're continuing forward on the same path. So it's time for us to take action. I'm proud of the bill that Tyler Sirois and Fiona McFarland have co-sponsored together. So what I'd like to do now is kick it off with HB1 and call up Representative Sirois to talk a little bit more about the bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everybody. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for your bold leadership on this issue. It is time that Florida take a stand. It's time that we address this issue, as other states are in the process of doing. And I also want to thank Representative McFarland for her partnership and her work in the realm of data privacy. As a legislature and as parents, we have no higher priority than protecting our children. We know that social media companies deploy features that are addictive and content that is harmful. We see the alarming rise in the rates of mental health disorders and suicide in our youth. Tragically, studies show that young girls appear to be suffering the most. In committee, we received testimony where our experts told us, and I quote, "Depression among American girls will become normal." That is simply unacceptable, and we must do something about it. House Bill 1 creates common sense guardrails. It protects children under the age of 16 from contents and features that are not developmentally appropriate or safe. We want to empower Florida's children, parents, families, and our Attorney General to hold social media companies accountable. As I've said before, Representative McFarland and I look forward to working in a collaborative process with all stakeholders, members of the industry, and our partners in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to carry this very important bill.
Thank you. And again, my compliments to Representative Sirois for putting together such a great bill, along with Representative McFarland. And now, we've split these two bills, and this deals HB 1 obviously with traditional social media, and then HB 3 deals with more of the obscenity, which obviously is not part of the First Amendment, and yet it's too easy to access on an internet platform for children. And so I'd like to call up Representative Chase Tremont, who sponsored that bill, to talk a little bit about his thoughts on the bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the honor of carrying this all-important bill. And it's a proud moment to be able to run this with my friend, Representative Overdorf, as well, who likely knows more about this issue than anybody. I would simply say the data is already out. It's been very clear as to what this does to young people and the minors and the development of their bodies, their mentality, their spirituality, all of the above. So everything Representative Sirois said certainly applies here. This is really just common sense legislation. It's very simple. We're simply requiring websites and applications that have a certain threshold of material harmful to minors to simply verify the age of the users. This has gone on far too long. I think the data is very clear on what this does to young people. We just got to spend a few moments celebrating the history of our state. And one of the reasons I'm so proud of this piece of legislation, as well as the number of things that we've done, is I believe that the story of Speaker Renner's administration and the leadership here will be that we did everything within our power to protect the lives and health and well-being of children. And that's what we're going to continue to do going forward. Mr. Speaker, it's an honor to carry this bill.
Thank you, Chase. Thank you. Questions?
Yes. There's a growing body of research and study about children's lack of free time, unsupervised play, and that having a fairly strong correlation with kids' mental health. The helicopter parents, the struggle to get into college, all of these things are basically contributing to teens' poor mental health. I'm just curious if you would address that, because you have a bill and legislature's being debated to give teens even less time because they'll be working going to school. And I'm curious if that's something that you've considered when we talk about teens and kids and the mental health.
Yeah, I don't see those two going together. I do see this bill and more unstructured time going together, because we've all been to a restaurant and you look over and every kid at the table is like this in their phone. They never look up, they never look at each other, their family members during the entire dinner. And so they're spending hours and hours, again, because the designers, and if you've seen The Social Dilemma, don't take it from me, take it from the people that designed these platforms. They tell you that they designed it to be addictive. And so once they get off of those platforms, you'll see them start to engage each other. You'll see them start to engage, as you said, in unstructured playtime. They need to get outdoors. That's a very, very important point you make, and that does go to their mental health. So it's two sides of the same coin. You don't get that because you're so focused on staying on an app all day and all night. And let me just tell you that I think where the House is headed already has a track record of success. If you'll remember last year, we did a bill on improving sleep, making sure kids aren't getting up at ridiculous hours of the day, and that's a little harder to measure. Of course, it hasn't phased in yet. But the other bill we did that was geared towards our kids' academic and mental health, because sleep helps mental health, is technology. And what we said is, look, put the phones down during classroom time. The Tampa Bay Times, the Orlando Sentinel, many papers have already reported on this issue and shown that in the short span of time, and some districts have gone further to say no phones throughout the entire day, including lunchtime, and they have the right to do that. We set the minimum of saying, look, when the teacher's speaking, there's no phones in the classroom. Kids, acts of violence, acts of disciplinary problems have plummeted from what they were. Teachers are ecstatic. They're saying that the kids are looking at each other, they're engaged with each other. In the case of those schools where they've put the phones down for the entire day during the lunch hour, they're putting out, checkers and chess and different things for people to engage with each other. It's going back to what should be, which is the ability that you pointed to, the ability to relate to each other as human beings. And that's what you've described, and you're right, because we have people that are going into college now that can't make eye contact. They can't have the conversation you and I are having right now. They've never written a handwritten letter. They've never really engaged with people on a human level, and life is tough. And if you can't do that, you're not going to make it very long in life. And so that's why this is so important. I'm glad you raised it, because not only is the damage from getting them off this important, because it is a direct damage, but also the benefit of what they'll do with all that extra free time by actually developing relationships. Part of the reason they're hopeless, part of the reason they're lonely, they don't have any friends. And they don't have any friends because they don't have any real friends. A person who likes you on Facebook is not a real friend. They're not. I mean, I have people on Facebook, I don't even know who they are. I just accepted them. So this is important, and you raise a really, really good point, because that is the other side of the coin. That's the benefit we're going to see, just like we see with the tech bill. On the backside of putting the phones down, all these new wonderful things are happening. Kids are learning, kids are engaging with each other today, just by virtue of that small bill. This is a much more important bill, a much more far-reaching bill, and it will have even better effects for our improvements in our children's mental health. We have kids today that are not with us because of social media. I believe that to my heart.
Could you elaborate a little bit more about what these addictive features are and how you surgically counter them?
Yeah, and you want to take that? And I can mention some, but I'll let Representative McFarland speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm really happy that you brought that up. All of us as adults know what it is. It's the infinite scroll. It's content that appeals to our behavioral instincts of outrage, disgust, shock. That content that is queued up for us that we engage with most is not beneficial to anyone's mind, much less the mind of a young teen that is still developing neurologically.
Yeah, and how does the bill address that?
I can do that.
Yeah.
So your question was how the bill addresses what the situation and features that Representative McFarland describes. So what House bill actually does is it says for minors under the age of 16, there is a ban on participating in social media, and that we want to see existing accounts deleted from minors as well, because we recognize that our youth are the ones that are most vulnerable and most susceptible to the kind of features and the behaviors that Representative McFarland described. Following the autoplay, seeing the material and content that is outrageous, seeing the things that appeal to outrage and disgust and emotion. Those are the things that are generating what some of these platforms term as likes. But we also know that this is the content and material that is most harmful to our youth.
What kind of feedback are you getting to this point from social media companies that are supporting a letter from Meta, something like that?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of like when the folks on the Democrat side suggested that we should amend our balanced budget and term limits to send it to Congress to let them do it. We've been around for 240 years. They haven't done it. And it's the same with the social media companies. They know that this is addictive. They monetize that at great profit. And think about any product. The sweet spot of marketers is when you're a teenager or a young adult, because once you get that person locked in, you got them for life. And so that's a customer, and I won't pick on Facebook, but all these sites that get somebody in their younger years and now they are addicted. They can't get their eyes off of it for the rest of their life. We're talking about 60, 70, 80 years of incredible profit. And so I don't believe they will do anything. I don't think they intend to do anything. I have met with one company that said they were looking at some things, but again, they're turning down enormous profit. They know that this is addictive and they know that it's harmful, but they're doing it anyway. In my mind, and I was a crusader for tort reform last year. This is one. where I would say to the plaintiff's attorneys, go get them. Because this is no different than opioids. This is no different than tobacco. It rings very, very similar to me where companies are knowingly putting forth a harmful product that is taking the lives of young people, and they're doing nothing to stop it. And so that's why we're going to act.
How you would enforce this? It's, when you straight down to 13, what does that operate to this?
Well, I mean, and that's a technical question, and I can call up the sponsors, and you'll hear through the committee process how that works. But there are vendors and on the private sector. We're not going to use the government to do that. We'll clarify that can do that. And again, it would be what we would be aiming for is a one-time check, kind of like if you go get a background check for a gun. They don't retain it, so we don't have a gun registry. So it's a one-time check to verify that you are who you are, and then you have access. You have an account. Look, I won't tell you that there is not going to be anyone on the planet that can evade that by some means, but we're talking about also removing the social pressure, because if you wind up saying, well, we'll just let parents decide on this one, parents are going to be harangued so much because it makes a kid ostracized not to be on social media, because right now your social life is on social media. And so it's really important, especially for these younger years, to get them off those platforms that are addictive and harmful. Let them re-engage again as children in the many, many things that kids do that are beneficial, to your earlier point. And so there's plenty of ways to now enforce it. And that's the good thing, is we now have the technology to do it.
On a slightly different topic, but still related to, I guess, children, the Senate just passed a big deregulation bill for school policies, and now the law is in the House of negotiations for that. How far are you willing to go on deregulation?
I certainly understand and approve of the overall mission, which is to try to let up on unnecessary reporting. You know, the example that I've given is we don't need every school to be a Category 5 hurricane shelter. So from a building code standpoint, some do. Obviously, we need a place to shelter that are reasonable changes. Where we would have issue, and do have issue on some of these proposals, is where it takes 25 years of accountability steps that have taken us from the bottom of the nation to the top of the nation and taking them all away. And there's certainly people today, unfortunately, that want to do that. They want to remove any oversight, any accountability that the state would have whatsoever in the business of schools at the local level. And we've just seen that that's not a good way to go. And so we do have significant issues with some of the parts of the proposal. We have no issues with parts of the proposal. And then there's others that throughout the course of committees will continue engaging. We have people and sponsors that are going back and forth looking at some things that I would say, for example, there's a part of the proposal on architects, repealing the need for an architect. I think completely for some building needs. Right now it's $50,000. Should we repeal it? I don't know. Let's have that conversation. Should it just be $500,000 or maybe $1 million of structure? You know, those are the kind of things that aren't obviously easy for us to say yes to, or obviously easy for us to say no to. But I've had, as always, really good, candid, honest, open conversations with the president on her goal. Her goal is in good faith to do good things. And I think where we'll be able to land is to make changes that take away unreasonable regulations without affecting the accountability we need to keep our kids at the highest level.
On HB1, of course, other states have put these age restrictions in place, and they got sued. And I think at least in California, there's a case going on in which the judge stopped the law from getting passed because it's a violation of kids' First Amendment rights. You mentioned the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Have you contemplated that, and how is this not an infringement on the First Amendment?
No, it's a great question, and it's one we are absolutely, we have talked about, we will continue to talk about. The case law is challenging, and so, and I am the first one to step up and say, I believe in the First Amendment as a military guy. I fought for your right to do things I don't like burn the flag and, you know, hold everything I believe in contempt and shout it from down Appalachia. But here's why I don't think it applies. Because what we're aiming at is not the words. Unfortunately, the same mean girls and boys can bully via email, they can bully via text. But what we're aiming at is the platform. We're not aiming at the words, we're aiming at the platform. And only those platforms that have, as the two representatives described, those addictive qualities is what distinguishes this. You can still get on, look at CNN or Tampa Bay Times or Miami Herald or whatever online and get on the internet to your heart's content. We're aiming at only those platforms that we know are highly addictive and also highly damaging. And that's why I believe this does not fall under the First Amendment scrutiny. But it's an important issue. We'll continue to have the conversation. We will land with a bill that is as aggressive as it can possibly be, because this is important for our kids. I'll just say in closing, I mentioned cigarette smoking and alcohol. I won't ask for a show of hands, but there are people that might smoke and might drink before they reach that age. But I don't know any of them that kill themselves as a result of it.
House Bill 1619, the open carry, permit open carry of firearms. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment across the board in many aspects. But we're in the same legislature, same members we had last year. There's not an appetite in both chambers to get that done. I support it personally, but I don't see. We always have to measure whether it's worth the committee time, the House floor time to pass a bill that would be controversial, that would take a lot of time, that we know is dead on arrival. And I respect, as the Senate president respects some areas that I mentioned in education where there's some red lines for me that I just can't take it. I'll light myself on fire, and so will many of the people standing behind me on some of these things that really go to the core of accountability. And so, and there's some senators that feel that way, and I respect that. So we'll have a respectful disagreement.
Thank you, everyone.
What's that?
Any changes on how school vouchers are managed? There were
Yeah.
raising concerns
Yes.
specifically.
We're going to do a couple things. One, we're going to make sure we ease up, we ramp up a bit the cap on unique abilities kids, so we don't run into a cap issue. I don't think we would anyway, but I just want to make sure. That's really important to me, that we never tell a parent of a disabled child that they can't get the scholarship. But secondly, we have some efficiency measures. We'll continue to hear from people through the committee process on how to do that. But the essence of it is we had, I think, 6 or 7 vetting stops, which is important, because then if we didn't have that, you might be asking me, why did this person who doesn't have a kid scholarship? So we want to make sure we retain accountability, but we want to vet. Once we vet it, we want to get that money out right away. But also the other thing that won't occur next year is we passed a bill, and then literally days later, the current entities had to take on over 100,000 new kids. And so there was that, egg kind of moving through the snake that won't be there next year. But nonetheless, not acceptable that we had some late payments, that were slow. So we absolutely aim to fix that this year and make other adjustments from people we've heard from. And that's our job, to hear from people and make adjustments, just as the president's doing on Live Local. Thank you. Thanks very much.